Hi! It's been a while, I know. The last video I made was back in September, but I have been busy for the right reason, and that's what this video is about. So, in my last video, I talked about how I'm planning to speak to engineers out there just to learn and listen to their stories and understand where engineers are struggling, and that's exactly what I did. And over the last 2-3 months, I believe, I have talked with over 50 engineers from all levels across all companies, FAANG, non-FAANG, you name it. And I've learned a lot. Like, let me tell you, a lot. And it really surprises me just how similar the struggles are across all these different levels and across all these different companies. Usually the misconception is that FAANG level companies have different struggle than non-FAANG companies. But let me tell you, my friend, it's really similar, and I'll definitely dive deep into that stuff in this video. So I'll talk about why I even did this, who I spoke to, and the different patterns that I recognized. I have broken that down into 6 recurring patterns, which I'll break down in this video, and I'll talk about what surprised me the most and how really good engineers are navigating through these issues from my experience as well as from what I've observed staff and principal level engineers do. And that is going to be the crux of today's video, and let's get straight into it without wasting any more time. Okay, so first let's talk about why I even did something like this. So when I started back as a junior engineer back in 2022, I used to do the same thing most engineers do. I used to work my ass off. I used to work on the weekends. I used to work at 10 p.m. at night, put out PRs, write as many lines of code as I could, thinking that'll get me noticed, thinking that'll push me forward. But let me tell you, it ain't. That stuff is not gonna work. So it was only when I pushed myself outside my comfort zone and started building relationship with really senior engineers like staff and principal level engineers is when I truly started understanding what the real problems are and what I need to do to start navigating these things. And when I started incorporating those things into my daily workings and started emulating these people is when I started seeing real changes in my career. I started getting more visibility, I started getting more confident, I started getting better projects, and yeah, I definitely got the promotions and whatnot. So that really made me feel that maybe people out there have very similar struggles and maybe they don't even know what the real problems are. Because I remember spending a lot of time on Reddit and seeing people talk about burnout, they're not seeing the fruits of their labor and all of that. So I took it upon myself to validate these thinkings. So yeah, I started reaching out to people on LinkedIn just to understand the different frustrations, their challenges, their fears, so I can truly understand where people are struggling. And let me tell you, I did not expect the response to be so intense and so similar across so many different people that I talked to. I wish someone had talked about these problems early on in my career, and that's what I plan to do with this YouTube channel going forward, because after talking to these 50 people, I have made a large list of ideas or problems that I can make really good videos on, which I truly feel will be really helpful to people out there, because most of the stuff that I see on YouTube right now is around how to crack FAANG interviews or how to learn to code. There's some stuff on promotions, but no one really talks about these deep down niche type things, which I plan to do. This definitely helped me validate some of my thinking, my assumptions, and yeah, drafted a plan for my YouTube channel as well. So throughout my research, like I said, I reached out to people on LinkedIn from various levels, but I mainly targeted people from junior to senior levels, and the main people that I talked to were junior and intermediate engineers. The reason being, that's where a lot of the growth happens, and that's where people need to figuring out how to stand apart in this highly competitive space where now AI is just making things more difficult going forward. Because usually staff plus and principal level engineers, they've already spent a lot of years in the industry, they have a lot of experience, they already made mistakes and learned through them over time, over like 10 plus years, for example. But junior, intermediate, and maybe even senior engineers, they're still in that growth phase where they're still understanding what the real problems are and how to navigate them. So that's why I focused on mainly these levels of candidates. And yeah, so I talked to engineers from non-FAANG, FAANG companies, startups as well. That is basically all sizes of companies, small, mid, large, just so that I can have a good sample size of candidates to talk to. and truly understand the pain points across a different spectrum of candidates. Because if I were only to focus on, let's say, FAANG companies, or if I was only to focus on, let's say, small companies, then it might be biased towards a specific type of candidate, which I did not want. And I wanted to have like a more general idea of where engineers are overall struggling, or if there are even any recurring patterns. And that's exactly what I did. Now that I've given a brief context on why I did this or who I talked to, now let's dive into the things that I've uncovered, which I've broken down into 6 patterns. Let's dive straight into it. Okay, so let's start with the first pattern. And I have my notes here because I'm not going to remember any of this. So the first pattern that I noticed or uncovered was around silent burnout. That is, engineers feeling tired, drained from working so hard and pushing themselves. I heard people talking about feeling tired all the time, not feeling like themselves, working nights and weekends, feeling guilty for not wanting to work harder, or not knowing if they're even pushing as hard as they should be. So this is a misconception that I've seen in the engineering world a lot, because even myself, when I started off as an engineer, I used to just work my ass off, like I talked about before. Working on the weekends was a thing. I thought putting out a PR at 10 p.m. will get me noticed. But guess what? A lot of the other engineers are doing the same thing, thinking that that will set them apart. But most times than not, you're just doing what every other average engineer is doing. And pushing for visibility and recognition through that form is just going to burn you out and stress you out. And that's the same pattern that I noticed. And yeah, this is the exact same experience that I had until I changed my thinking and started operating in a different way, which again, I'll talk about towards the end of this video. So this was the first pattern, which is around burnout. Now let's look into the second pattern. The second pattern is around confidence and self-doubt. So this is where even talented engineers feel insecure and have this imposter syndrome, no matter how experienced they are or no matter how much technical skill they have. So here I heard people talking about they have a fear of asking questions. They have a fear of asking questions during meetings or even on Slack. They're afraid of making mistakes because they feel they'll be judged for it. They have imposter syndrome, classic. They freeze in meetings when people ask them questions or when they are asked to present something. And again, feeling judged for making mistakes or asking those questions. They're doubting their skills, even if they're really good and have a lot of experience. So I've seen a lot of people find it hard to navigate this imposter syndrome. Let's put that in this bucket. Because, I mean, let's face it, we're all humans and we all want to be liked. Who will not want to be liked going forward? So asking questions that we feel are dumb, or flagging something if something does not feel right. We feel we'll be looked down upon if we do stuff like that. But most times than not, from what I have realized and what I've seen, this is really important. Asking questions thinking they're dumb, but still asking them has proven to be so helpful in my career, because I've had people reach out to me after asking those questions saying that, thank you so much for asking that question. Even I had that same exact issue that I wanted clarity on. And imposter syndrome, man, let me tell you, even when I was promoted to senior engineer, my imposter syndrome was through the roof because I was in the same room with people 4 or 5 times more experience than I had, while I was there with just under 2 years of experience and not knowing why I was even there. So this was definitely challenging. And from what I've realized talking to people is the more higher you go, the imposter syndrome just gets worse. And it never goes away in any form. You just need to understand how to navigate through this. So yeah, this was the second bucket that I would put the problem in. Now let's talk about the third pattern. It's about feeling invisible and undervalued. So here it is hard work not turning into recognition. So in bucket 1, we talked about the burnout, where people are pushing themselves so hard but still not seeing the fruits of it. Here it's about not getting the recognition they feel they deserve. So it's about doing everything that was asked of them but not getting the promotions. Seniors getting credit for their work. Their work is getting overlooked no matter how good of a work they do. There's no clear promotion criteria. They're not trusted with better or complex projects, and they're stuck with the same small level things which are given to most engineers. They feel like a cog in the wheel because they don't have a say in the direction or the strategic impact. So this was again really common across a lot of the people that I talked to. And yeah, like I mentioned previously, this ties a bit into the pattern one of burnout, where people are just focusing on working hard instead of working smart, which ends in them being burnt out and not getting the recognition for it. Visibility and recognition comes when your coworkers or your managers in your skip think that you're driving business impact, or your perception is of someone that makes strategic impact or drives business impact. And that's not going to happen if you work your ass off or work on the weekends or something. So it ties a bit into communication. And again, I'll talk a bit more about this at the end of the video, or I plan to make a lot of videos on this going forward, so I won't go too deep about that here. So now let's go into the fourth pattern. It's communication struggles. The problem is not technical skill, is how they drive clarity, trust, build alignment, and get that visibility that we talked about. So some examples of what I heard my interviewees talking about were they find it hard to explain technical ideas, they feel hard to speak under pressure, not knowing how to talk about impact, struggling to work with business, product, or non-technical teams to drive that alignment and trust. They feel lost in cross-team communication. And yeah, this just leads to them being overlooked, because communication, let me tell you, is such an important skill. And that's one of the core skills that I personally had focused on to start building that visibility and that recognition. And even being really introverted that I am, communication can be broken down into the written and the speaking part of things. And honing both of them jointly is what really drives that alignment. So you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be seen as a good communicator. You need to be able to use your strength to drive alignment, maybe through a written format, or even learn how to speak confidently. Like, you don't have to speak a lot, you just need to know how to speak confidently without as less stuttering as possible, without using much filler words and all of that. Because that can immediately change the perception that people have of you and how you present, let's say. For example, think about this. Imagine an engineer is presenting something and they immediately start stuttering, they start using filler words. Think back to what your perception of them would be. Would you think they're confident? Or would you think that maybe this person does not know what he's talking about? Food for thought. So yeah, things like that do matter. And that's what I've seen with these really high up engineers, because they excel at speaking. And yeah, speaking confidently, eloquently, and building that authority around themselves, which helps build trust, helps build alignment, knowing how to dumb down the technical stuff to get buy-in from business people, or how to tie the technical stuff into business impact. So this is super important. But yeah, this is, again, I'll talk a lot in depth over future videos. So I'll get back to my next pattern, which is the fifth pattern, which is lack of support and guidance. So here engineers feel alone. So they feel managers are not supportive, they don't have mentorship in their companies or their teams, they don't get clear feedback, or a lot of the feedback they get is too generic and is not helpful. There's no clear growth path in their team or in the company. They feel isolated. So this is an important one, because even in my experience, if I did not have mentorship, I wouldn't be where I am today. It was only because I had good mentorship and I actively seek mentorship from these really senior people is I could truly understand what the real problems are and how to navigate them. If that was not there, I would still be one of those engineers who would be working my ass off, writing code at 10 p.m. on a Sunday, and just feeling stressed, burnt out, less fulfilled with my career, not confident, not being able to speak well, and things like that. So this is a very, very important thing, and I'll probably categorize it really high up there as well. Yeah, so now let's go to the sixth pattern, the last one. This is the fear of falling behind. So this is more about the rising anxiety around AI, layoffs that's happening all over the globe right now, and relevance. So the common themes are fear of losing their jobs, fear of being average, fear of being left behind, fear of not having the right skills, feeling like others or their peers are moving faster, feeling of AI replacing them, and so on. And this is one of the most widespread fears out there. And again, if you want to stand out as an engineer, you can't just focus on doing the same generic bullshit that every other engineer does. So that's where the strategic operations come into the play on what I briefly talked about, and combining your non-technical skills with your technical skills so that you're seen as an all-rounder and someone who just drives impact and knows how to position themselves as an authority that can build trust and build alignment. So those are the 6 common patterns that I saw, and this is very consolidated and aggregated list of things that I heard. I have like a list of 100 different things, if not more, of all the different stuff that people talked about during my interviews. And guess what? I plan to make a lot of videos around this in the future. And if you see, a lot of these things are pretty niche and not something a lot of people talk about, and that's exactly what I want to focus on going forward. So I can truly provide value to people, because like I said previously, if I did not have the right guidance, if I did not know how to identify the right problems and how to navigate them, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I have seen a pretty fast career growth as well. So I'm pretty pumped to see where this goes, because I truly feel I can really help people, or at least open eyes for people out there so that they understand that maybe they need to change their operations a bit and not just focus on learning only the technical skills and grinding that super hard. So and like I talked about previously as well, talking to these 50 people was such a great exercise for me, just setting myself outside my comfort zone, especially being an introverted person, to just talking to people, reaching out to random people all around the globe, getting them on a video call and talking to them, asking them questions. So that itself was a great opportunity. I learned a lot, and it really, really surprised me on just how similar and recurring the problems are across all these different levels and companies, no matter the size. And I definitely found this a bit funny, because every engineer feels that their problems are unique. But when you go ahead and talk to engineers across all these different spectrums, you truly understand that problems are more systemic than unique. It's all about knowing how to put the right foot forward, or how to put the right foot forward in the best possible way, and learn how to navigate these things. A lot of time, yes, the problems can be unique, but majority, if not 95% plus of the problems can be fixed by knowing how to navigate these things correctly, and are systemic and not unique. And another thing is that introverted engineers, and a lot of engineers are introverted because they like to do head down work and not talk, they all feel that communication is their weakness. But let me tell you, my friend, it can actually be your strength. I'm a big introvert, and I have learned how to navigate through this in a way that repositions that weakness into a strength and works best in my favor. And again, like I mentioned multiple times, I do plan to make a lot of detailed videos around this in the future. So I won't bore everyone too much right now with that. This also brings me to the next thing on what I've seen some really great engineers do differently around these things. So number one is asking better questions and not feeling bad that they ask dumb questions, because believe it or not, it will always end up helping someone, if not providing more clarity than required. And then they communicated their impact. It was not about just putting out a PR or completing a task, but more about how that PR or a feature really drove business, or how it helped the team or the project in whatever way. And then basically they framed their technical contributions in a way that drives business impact. They were also able to build trust with managers and their coworkers, basically being seen as an authority in what they do, so that they can build the alignment, build trust with technical, non-technical people, and then show to their managers that, they are just go-to engineers for any problem. Another thing is that I've seen people think that they need to take additional responsibility only when the title comes with it. But let me tell you, my friend, usually operating as a leader and taking ownership without the title being there is what will actually set you apart. And if you don't do that, the title will just make you feel more of an imposter. So just start taking a bit more ownership. And that does not mean taking on more work. And I'll definitely talk a bit about this afterwards as well. And last thing I would say, that in terms of communication, they always make their work easy to understand, so that even when, let's say, working with product, customer service, QA, whatever, who are not as technical, they're still able to talk about their ideas or solutions in a way that is easily understood. Because if you dive too much into the technical jargon, you'll probably end up confusing everyone and yeah, just create more confusion than alignment, which is something that you don't want. Again, so this is just some high-level stuff that I've seen work for me and that I've observed some really great engineers do around how to navigate some of these different things that we talked about and actually get that visibility, get that confidence, improve the communication and all that shebang. So yeah, this was what this video was about. I wanted to make a video around what I have been up to the last few months and what I plan to do with this channel going forward. Talking to these 50 engineers has been game-changing for me, and I feel I can truly provide value going forward. I always feel it would have been great if I had this kind of support early on in my career, and even if I had to ask ChatGPT on how to do this, most times than not, I'm just gonna get some generic bullshit answer. But instead of knowing what really works, so a lot of the stuff that I'll be talking about has been from my own experience or what I've observed some really great engineers doing. Yeah, I'm super pumped to see where this goes, and if this type of stuff is of interest to you, do consider subscribing because, like I said, I do plan to make a lot of niche content around how to navigate these struggles and pain points, which I feel can truly help people understand what kind of problems they need to focus on and what they need to change in their daily operations. So anyways, I'll stop blabbering and yeah, as always, I'm here to help.